So I'm Stephen DeBerry at Bronze Investments, and I'm an impact investor. For me, that means a couple of things. One is I provide capital to build companies. So we support entrepreneurs and we help them build organizations and create financial value. So that's the investor part. The impact part is really orienting around a subset of all the companies in the world. And we really focus on that subset that creates its financial value through a product or a service that creates some form of social impact. And we're very focused on domestic health, economic development, education, and related impacts, particularly focusing on vulnerable communities. So challenges. So, I think there are a few, and they've changed over time. One of the central challenges has been getting investors and the market to buy into the idea that you can generate a profit and create an impact, and that the two don't have to be mutually exclusive. Most people, I heard a recent quote, it's like having a houseboat. It's not a great house, it's not a great boat, it's a houseboat. And the comeback was, no, the metaphor isn't a houseboat, it's a sailboat, it's wind powered, and we're gonna circumnavigate the globe with it. That's impact investing. So that's one challenge. Two is, I think this is the central challenge that I have today, finding the skilled entrepreneurs who have both the insight to identify and address a large and tractable problem, and the skill set to build an organization. And I think most entrepreneurs tend to have one or the other. It's a rare entrepreneur that has both. And so we need to build more depth in the field of entrepreneurship and cultivate and socialize folks around the idea of building for these kinds of markets, because we have no shortage of these sorts of problems. We just need to cultivate folks who have the skill set to address them in the way that the industry is starting to do.
Thinkers, entrepreneurs.
The good news is we have a bunch of new tools at our disposal that really have never been available to us in the way they are now. So I spent a lot of my time in technology investing, and if you look at the technology landscape, there are known processes of customer development and lean startup methodology and just a generalized understanding of how you build companies. And that's very specific to the early stage technology context. But I think we have an opportunity to build similar kind of rubrics for impact investing. And then once those are built, we have a set of tools available to disseminate the information that we've never had. Let's put the stuff on the web. Be transparent, be open, and build a culture of mentorship, and really leverage the organizations that are out there that are oriented around teaching entrepreneurship. I spent a lot of time working with the Kauffman Venture Fellows program, for example, and taking, again, the rubric that they've built over time to help train traditional venture capital investors, some of the best in the world, in fact, and applying that body of knowledge to impact investing. Just kind of curating and editing on the edges to make it really fit what we're trying to do. I think that's a very powerful thing that we could do.
That space a little bit?
Absolutely. I mean, this is an extension of the the general idea of just put the stuff on the web. Absolutely. This should be accessible. It should be available. It should be understandable for everyday people, because everyday people are the ones having the problems. And I think we'd all be surprised how much they and we can solve these problems with just a little bit of information. So absolutely, online education is a big piece of it. Social media platforms, projects like this, film and taking the discussion to fora where people can access it and become aware of this. I mean, I still think impact investing is in its infancy, and we still need to tell the story about what it is. So the more films we have, the more communities we have discussing it, the more, importantly, examples we have of it. So we can point to a thing and say, that's impact investing, and isn't that great? Look what happened there. We want to see more of that. I think that'll be a great lever for all of us.
Perfect. Excellent. Can you tell us a story about something that comes to mind in a success or where you've seen this functioning well?
A couple of years ago, I had a chance to be a graduation speaker for a graduation ceremony called the College Bound Brotherhood, focused on young black men in the 9-county San Francisco Bay Area graduating from high school, going to college. Graduation rate there of young black men that graduate college ready, 9%. It's like, this is the level of the crisis. So I walked into the room. The event was held at the Oakland Museum, and your typical kind of reception, environment. But I saw this dude in the back of the room, a young guy. He had a hat on, and he was leaning up against the wall. And everyone was in kind of their semi-formal graduation kind of attire, and he had his hat on, he had some jeans on, he was leaning against the wall, and I thought, he looks a little out of place. I wanted to check him out. So I did a couple laps around the room. I went to go talk to him. Long story short, I got to know him that evening, and I found out that he wasn't leaning against the wall because he wanted to look cool. He was leaning against the wall because he had recently been shot. And this was not the first time he had been shot. It was the third time he had been shot. And he was there in that room to support his friends who were going off to Howard University. He was a good dude, So I kind of took him under my wing. His name's Eric. He had been shot 3 times then. Today he's been shot 4 times. This is the kind of challenge that too many people like Eric are dealing with. But what does that have to do with impact investing? So one of the things that we decided to work on together is, well, let's get him back in school, of course, and, help him, kind of advance his own interests. And he was willing to work and is willing to work hard toward that end. So I called, I actually didn't call, I texted him just to check in with him as we keep our conversation going. And he let me know that he was going to Laney College, the junior college, the city college in Oakland. So that's fantastic, man, great, And he let me know that he was on the football team. Awesome, you're on the football team. Going to the weight room, working out. I couldn't be prouder of you. What kind of classes are you taking? Well, that's when the conversation got interesting, because he couldn't get into most of the classes that he needed. Because why? There are not enough chairs. There are not enough physical seats in community colleges in California to seat someone like Eric. It just so happened that at the same time I was working on an investment that is building an online university, which addresses that problem. Obviously, it's through technology. The only way that you can get out of the physical constraint that we have for the almost 500,000 people in California who can't get into community college education because there physically aren't enough seats. Obviously online, you don't have that kind of constraint. So I think building a platform like that creates a fundamental impact for someone like Eric, who's trying to do the right thing, who wants to better himself, wants to better his community, and just wants access to the resources to do so. So I could give a whole bunch of examples about the work we do and have done over time. But at the end of the day, when I think about impact, I think about Eric. I think about, how can I build a company, a product, a service that impacts someone's life so directly? That's kind of my personal litmus test, and a story I always kind of keep in mind when I'm trying to do what I do.
Beautiful.
I'm an anthropologist by training. So I have spent most of my life thinking about community in one form or another, and people, who we are, why do we do the things we do, how do we organize ourselves. And I've always been frustrated, ever since I was a kid, with this acceptance that people have to struggle. I just don't believe that. We can do so much better. You know what I mean? We really can. We can do so much better. I just never got that. So when I was in graduate school, my initial intent was to be a professor. I was going through graduate school along the track and had a realization, which was that I was learning how to analyze communities and think about communities and kind of deconstruct. But that was primarily a diagnostic process. And at a point, it occurred to me that we know what the problems are. We don't need more diagnosis. We need to address what we already know we're challenged by. So, and there was something else happening at the time that was really interesting, which was the internet. So this was around 96. And I just saw how technology was changing the world, and I realized there would be a whole new set of tools that we could bring to bear to bring solutions where there are challenges. And I was in grad school at Oxford. I left the anthropology building and literally walked over to the business school and said, I'd like to sit here now, please. Because I realized that in the building that I was sitting in previously, the discussions were about, analyzing and diagnosing, but the problems I were interested in had solutions that were usually economic in nature. And I wanted to think more about the mechanics of using the economy to solve problems, social problems. And I think that was the big shift for me. I'd always been an entrepreneur. I started my first business when I was 9. And so it was just a natural kind of inclination to think about, I couldn't turn it off if I wanted to. But I think it was going to business school that gave me the tools and the language to start talking about what I'd always been thinking about in a different way and connecting to bigger structures, markets, in ways that were more strategic, more refined, more focused. So I became an entrepreneur more formally after that. I moved to Australia. I started a business down there. I came